Hi guys, it's Lindsay. Welcome back to The Wandering Reader. Today I'm going to be talking about my winter book recommendations. I realise that it's the beginning of March, but looking out my window right now, it is snowing quite heavily. We've had a few days of really quite heavy snow in the UK, and I live in the east of the UK, the southeast of the UK, sort of East Anglia, and we don't get snow very often. And this is the heaviest that it's been for a number of years. So we're absolutely freezing. I've had a few days off from work just because of the snow and not being able to get in and that sort of thing. So I thought I would film this video anyway, because I feel like we're not going to see spring, certainly where I live, for quite some time. And it's nice to be able to refer back to videos like this when winter comes round again. So I have 8 books to talk to you about today, so let's jump into the first book. The first book that I want to talk about today is The Snow Child, and this is by Erwin Ivey. I think that's how you pronounce that name. I read this quite a few years ago now, and I don't actually have my own copy of it anymore. I think I lent it to my sister and then I haven't seen it since. So this is an absolutely beautiful book. It's very fairy tale-esque and it's set in Alaska in the 1920s. And the two main characters, the husband and wife in this, have moved to Alaska to sort of start a new life. But it's obviously very bleak and very remote in Alaska, and they're finding it a struggle to kind of get a new life together. And one of the things they're struggling with is that they can't conceive a child. So one day they build this snow child. So build a child out of snow, leave it in the back garden, and then the next day when they go out there, the snow child has disappeared. Obviously the rest of the snow hasn't, so they're kind of really yeah, kind of taken aback by this. And then they see this child in the forest, this little girl in the forest, and sort of take her in, and the story goes from there. It's very, very magical. It's very bleak at times and very fairy tale-esque, but I absolutely loved the writing in this. And I just remember being really captivated by the story. So I think this is the perfect kind of cozy up winter read, just because of the setting and the sort of magical fairy tale elements of it, and I would definitely recommend that. The next book that I want to recommend is Between Shades of Grey, and this is by Rita Sepetys, and this is a historical fiction novel that focuses around Lena and her mum and her brother. And at the beginning of the book they are taken by Soviet guards from their home country of Lithuania, and they are shipped to Siberia to work in a prisoner camp. Is that how you would describe it? I don't really know, but it's just about how they cope with being in this camp and how they are struggling to survive and things like that. It's absolutely brutal, really hard hitting at times, really, really emotional, but I absolutely flew through it. I thought it was so just enrapturing. I just, yeah, loved the characters, loved their spirit, and just was just totally blown away by how they could survive in such ridiculously harsh conditions. But yeah, this is definitely one to cuddle up with at the weekend, and you can fly through this, and I would definitely recommend it. Next up, I want to recommend Burial Rites by Hannah Kent. I'm not going to talk too much about it here because I talk about this book all the time on my channel, but this is the story of Agnes, and she's the last woman to be hanged in Iceland in the 1800s. And yeah, it tells her story about kind of why she's being hanged and things like that, and just the remoteness of this, the starkness of the scenery, will really appeals to me as a winter read, but also just really kind of being enraptured by her story, kind of wrapped up in her as a character, not expecting to be so attached to her as a character, and just, yeah, the perfect winter read. Then I've got here The 13th Tale, and this is by Diane Setterfield. This tells the story of a woman who works in a bookshop, and she has been asked to go out to this big country house and write the biography of this really kind of famous writer. And people have been trying to write her biography for years, and she's never allowed anybody to do it, never told anybody the truth about her own upbringing and who she really is. So this woman, I can't remember her name, Margaret, that's it. Margaret has been tasked with going out there and sort of investigating, listening to this woman's story, and this is the perfect kind of cozy up mystery for me. You're just kind of sitting down with it, finding out what's going on. There are loads of twists and turns in here. There are some great characters and great settings, and I just think it's the perfect read for winter time when you're sort of sitting there with a nice cup of tea, and really not difficult to read at all, but something to kind of get yourself invested in, because it's a bit chunkier than some of the ones I've talked about so far, but definitely worthwhile. Then I have here The Childfinder, and this is by Renee Denfield. Again, talked about this quite recently on my channel, so I'm not going to linger too much on it here, but this is a thriller novel that's set in Oregon, yeah, in the forest of Oregon, and the main character Naomi is a childfinder, and she's been asked to find out what's happened to this little girl called Madison who disappeared 3 years ago, and I just love the setting of this one. I thought the descriptions of the forests and the snow were so well done, and that just makes it the perfect winter read for me. But also there are some fairy tale elements in this as well, and I just always associate fairy tales with the winter time too. So yeah, definitely recommend that as a thriller to read in the winter. Another thriller that I would recommend for the winter is Dark Places, and this is by Gillian Flynn, and this is my favourite of her books. I've read all of them, but I think this is her first one as well. This tells the story of Libby. When she was 7, she witnessed her family being murdered, and she helped to convict her 15-year-old brother of their murders, and now with the stories being told as she's an adult, and this group have got in touch with her, and this group are wanting to sort of interview her. They're like a group that kind of investigate crimes that have gone on as a bit of a hobby. So she's delving back into her past again when she's tried quite hard to forget it. And it's just so deliciously dark, and the writing was brilliant. I just loved the twists and turns in this, and yeah, it is really dark as a thriller, and I just kind of associate wintertime with sort of more dark stories as well, so definitely recommend that one. Then I've got a couple of different books to add to the list as well. Sometimes I think winter is a perfect opportunity to escape somewhere different, you know, get away from how snowy and bleak it is out there, and kind of escape to a different bit of the world where the weather's completely different and things are completely different. And so one of those is Snowflower and the Secret Fan, and this is by Lisa C. I've read this a long time ago now, but I remember being so, just enjoying it so much. And this tells the story of Lily. She's been born into quite a poor family, a poor farming family in China in the 19th century, and she sees herself as just, I think her family as well, see as just another expensive mouth to feed. And then a local matchmaker says that if her feet are bound, she can make a good marriage. So she's kind of taken along to this group where the women have their feet bound, and the story goes from there. And I just remember being so totally captivated by this really archaic, horrible tradition that they had in 19th century China. This kind of idea of if you've got small feet, then you'll make a better match in marriage. And the things that they did to these girls is just utterly unbelievable. So yeah, I talked about escapism. This is not good escapism, but at the same time it's nice. I think I love reading about other cultures and other traditions, so I would definitely recommend it from that perspective. And then the last one is quite a chunker, but I've got here Shantaram, and this is by Gregory David Roberts. And I don't think I have heard anybody talk about this on BookTube, but this is, I think, sort of largely autobiographical. It tells the story of Gregory David Roberts and when he escaped from an Australian prison, and he went to India. And basically it's about his time in India and the different things that he does in India and things like that. And it's just massive escapism for me, because India is a country that just is such a mystery to me, but at the same time is one that I yeah, I'm just so intrigued to find out more about. And although this is a chunker, this has got to be close to, yeah, it's like 930 pages. It's so worthwhile. I just found myself totally wrapped up in the story about what he was doing with his life, the different characters that he came across, the different practices that he came across, just things that were totally alien and totally different. Just had me hooked. So yeah, I would not be afraid by the size of this at all. I think it took me a few weeks to read. And this was a time when I was just reading one thing at a time, which I don't do that anymore. But yeah, so it took me a few weeks to get through, but I would say it was definitely a worthwhile investment. I have the sequel up on my shelf, and a couple of people have said to me that the sequel isn't as good as this, so I'm less inclined to pick that up at the moment. Probably will do eventually, but this one, totally loved. This is just great escapism, and it's great to learn about things that I just literally didn't know anything about. So there you go guys, they were my winter reading recommendations. I'd love to have a chat with you in the comments below. What's the perfect book that you've read that you think is great for reading in the winter? Love chatting to you guys as always. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.